I never thought a few solar panels would ruin someone's life, but that was before I met Linda Harrington, president of the Oakwood Meadows HOA. The kind of person who looked at a neighborhood and saw a chessboard. And everyone else? Just pawns to be maneuvered or removed. I moved here because it was peaceful. Clean streets, trimmed hedges, a quiet place to live out my work-from-home years. I followed every rule, paid every due, filled out every form, including the one that allowed me to install solar panels on my roof. I submitted the request, waited for architectural approval, and got the green light. The work was done in 3 days, and it looked great. Modern, efficient, and totally compliant. 3 days after that, I came home to find a violation notice taped to my front door. It said the solar panels were unaesthetic and in violation of the community's appearance standards. A $100 daily fine would begin in 7 days. I thought it had to be a mistake. So I called the HOA office. No answer. Emailed them. No reply. Finally, I left a voicemail. The next morning, a new notice arrived, this one threatening legal action. Still no call back. I checked the name at the bottom of both letters, Linda Harrington. I'd heard the name before. At block parties, in whispered complaints. They called her Karen, but no one dared say it to her face. I decided to confront the issue directly. The next board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday at the community center. I printed every document I had, approval letters, permits, photos. I got there early. The room was already half full. People avoided eye contact, like they didn't want to be caught associating with someone in violation. At precisely 7 p.m., Linda entered. Tall, rigid, hair tied back so tight her forehead shined under the fluorescent lights. Her walk was calculated. Her folder hit the table like a judge's gavel. She called the meeting to order and started bulldozing through the agenda like a court clerk on a caffeine binge. When it was finally time for homeowner issues, I stood up, introduced myself, and calmly explained everything. I even held up the signed approval letter from the architectural committee. She didn't even flinch. Just stared. Then smiled. Not a warm smile. A smile that looked like it hurt to maintain. That approval, she said, was given in error. I blinked. I'm sorry? The committee member who signed off has been retrained. The decision has been overturned. The panels must be removed. I said. That's not how contracts work. I was polite but firm. I followed every rule. I submitted everything. And it was approved. You can't just, the HOA has final authority, she interrupted. We reserve the right to amend decisions if new information comes to light. I wasn't angry yet. Just confused. The room was quiet. No one looked up. I left the meeting stunned. In the parking lot, one of the board members, Tom, caught up with me. She's targeting you, he whispered. Her house backs up to yours. She can see those panels from her deck. She hates them. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about rules. This was personal. I contacted a lawyer the next day. HOA disputes were his specialty. I handed him the approval paperwork and the new violation notices. He reviewed everything and confirmed what I suspected. They couldn't retroactively revoke a documented approval for a completed project. He drafted a formal letter citing the state's solar access laws. It was direct, professional, and airtight. I sent it to the HOA certified mail. Part of me hoped that would be the end of it. Then I came home 2 days later and found Linda and 2 men standing in my backyard. Cameras in hand. Taking photos of my house like they were surveying a crime scene. I opened my back door. Can I help you? I asked. Linda turned with that same tight smile. Inspection, she said, handing me a printed notice. I read it. According to the HOA's rules, they had to give 48 hours written notice before entering a resident's property. I pointed that out. She said the notice was delivered. I said, when? She didn't answer. What she didn't know was that I'd already installed security cameras. One of them had caught her sliding that same notice under my door just 20 minutes before she entered my yard. I didn't argue. I asked them to leave. She resisted. One of the men murmured something. They left, but she turned back and said, "This isn't over." And I believed her. I knew she'd escalate. So I installed a dash cam in my car. A good one. Front and rear coverage, with automatic cloud upload. Just in case. People like Linda, when they start to unravel, they don't stop. They double down. They burn everything down on the way out. And I was starting to see the match in her hand. Linda didn't waste time. Less than 48 hours after I asked her to leave my property, another letter arrived. This one wasn't even pretending to be civil. It stated that failure to comply with HOA directives would result in lien procedures against my home. I brought the letter to my lawyer, who read it twice and then laughed in disbelief. "She's bluffing," he said. "They need a judge to sign off on any lien, and no judge is going to back her on this." He sent another letter, stronger this time, reminding them that harassment, trespassing, and abuse of authority were actionable offenses. The HOA didn't respond. But Linda did. That Saturday morning, I noticed a car parked at the end of the street for hours. A dark blue SUV with tinted windows. Later that afternoon, I spotted it again, 2 blocks down, but facing my driveway. I waved. No response. It pulled away. Coincidence? Maybe. But my cameras logged it circling the neighborhood 3 more times over the weekend. On Monday, I got an email from a fake account claiming to be from the county building inspector. It said my solar panels were under review for noncompliance, and that I'd be contacted soon. I forwarded it to the actual county office. No such notice had ever been sent. Then came the HOA newsletter. Front page headline: Unauthorized modifications threaten neighborhood standards. No names, just fear-mongering. Photoshop examples of bad renovations that look suspiciously like my panels but distorted and warped. Neighbors stopped waving. One of them crossed the street rather than pass my house. A woman I'd never spoken to emailed me a link to an article about solar energy scams. The HOA was turning me into a pariah, framing me as the guy who thought he was above the rules. I stayed calm. I documented everything. I sent updates to my lawyer. I checked my security footage twice a day. And then it happened again. I was in my garage, organizing tools, when I heard a rustle outside. I stepped out just in time to see Linda, again, with the same 2 men from before. They were in my side yard, cameras in hand. This time, they were taking photos of my windows. I asked them to leave immediately. Linda handed me another notice. I read it silently. It looked official, but wasn't signed, stamped, or dated. I pointed that out. HOA protocol allows for spot inspections under Section 12.3, she said smugly. I already knew that clause. I'd highlighted it. Memorized it. It required 48 hours' notice, in writing, and the homeowner's acknowledgement. None of that had happened. I told her she was trespassing and warned that further entry would be reported to the authorities. Her response? "We're documenting violations. It's your word against mine." That was the moment I knew. She didn't care about rules anymore. She was operating purely on ego. She'd built her little empire of mulch color codes and mailbox alignment. And I dared to challenge it. Now she was trying to destroy me with every petty tactic she had. I waited for them to leave, then pulled the footage. Clean angles. High-res. Linda, uninvited, examining my home, pointing at windows, whispering to her silent minions. I saved it. Backed it up twice. Uploaded it to a secure folder. Paranoia? Maybe. But I was learning fast. People like her don't stop when they're wrong. They double down until they're dragged away. The following week was quiet. Too quiet. No letters, no drive-bys, no inspections. But I knew it wasn't over. She was regrouping. Planning. And she didn't disappoint. Friday morning, I was backing out of my driveway when I saw her marching toward my car. Determined, fuming, arms swinging like a general on the warpath. I stopped and rolled down the window. "Good morning, Linda," I said calmly. "Is there something I can help you with?" She leaned in too close, perfume suffocating, eyes gleaming. "The county inspector says your solar installation violates Section 4.6. You'll be receiving a formal notice shortly." It was a lie. I knew it the second she said it. "That's interesting," I replied, reaching for my glove compartment. "Because I have the final approval right here. Signed and sealed." As I leaned over, her hand darted through the open window. Fast. Like a snake. She grabbed my dash cam, ripped it from the mount, and yanked the cord free. I shouted, "What the hell are you doing?" Her face lit up with triumph. "Recording people without consent is illegal in this state. I'm confiscating this as evidence." She stepped back, dropped the camera to the pavement, and crushed it under her heel. Then, like it was hers to begin with, she scooped it up and shoved it into her purse. "You'll be hearing from the HOA attorney about this invasion of privacy," she snapped, spinning on her heel and storming back toward her house. I didn't chase her. I didn't scream. I didn't even curse. I pulled out my phone and called the police. And while I waited for them to arrive, I walked into my house, sat down at my desk, and opened my cloud dashboard. My dashcam had a feature, an automatic upload trigger if the device was suddenly unplugged or impacted. I clicked refresh. There it was. A full recording. Linda reaching into my car. Her grabbing the camera. Footage from inside her purse. And then blackness. By the time the officers arrived, I was ready. I explained what happened. Gave them the security footage from my house cameras. One of them asked, "Do you still have the dash cam itself?" I said no, Linda had taken it. "She denies that," he replied. "Says you're fabricating the story to avoid HOA compliance." I nodded. Then I played the cloud footage. Linda's face, crystal clear. Her hand reaching in. Yanking the camera. Dropping it. Stomping on it. And audio too, every word. Her smug declaration about seizing evidence. The officers exchanged a look. Then one asked if he could make a copy. I handed over a thumb drive. I didn't ask what they'd do next. I already knew. 20 minutes later, the officers returned to Linda's house. They didn't knock politely this time. I watched from my window as they approached the door with a firm, measured purpose. Within minutes, they were inside. The blinds were open. I saw her pacing, arguing, waving her hands like she was commanding a courtroom. Her face flushed red. Her body language screamed panic. 10 minutes passed. Then they escorted her out. No jacket, no portfolio, no smug expression. Just handcuffs and stunned disbelief. They brought her across the street like it was a perp walk on national TV. I opened my door as they placed her in the back of the cruiser. One officer approached. "We're placing Ms. Harrington under arrest for theft, destruction of property, and obstruction of justice." His voice was even, but you could tell he was still processing the absurdity of the situation. "She admitted to taking the dash cam and trying to destroy it. Said she ran it through her garbage disposal to eliminate the footage." He shook his head. "Didn't realize the footage had already been uploaded to the cloud. That last charge, obstruction, that's a felony." I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just nodded and thanked them for their time. As the cruiser pulled away, I watched her face through the window, mouth moving, eyes wild. Probably still trying to explain how she was the real victim in all of this. That's what made her dangerous. She believed it. Word spread fast. By sunset, the HOA Facebook group was in chaos. Some were shocked. Others weren't. Tom messaged me directly. "She's gone too far," he wrote. "The board's meeting to vote on her suspension." I didn't reply. I needed a break. For the first time in weeks, I didn't check my cameras or read my mailbox with dread. I slept. 2 weeks later, I got a subpoena in the mail. Linda's arraignment was scheduled. I showed up in a collared shirt and jeans. Nothing fancy. Just a guy who followed the rules. Her attorney tried to argue that the charges were exaggerated, that she acted in the interest of the HOA, that she was provoked. The judge didn't buy it. The prosecution laid out the facts, backed by video evidence, timestamps, and expert testimony from my lawyer. They showed the footage, the moment of theft, the stomp, the inside the purse recording. Linda didn't even look up. Her lawyer requested dismissal. The judge denied it. Bail was set at $25,000. You could hear her inhale through her nose like someone had dumped cold water down her back. Her face crumpled. For a moment, she didn't look like a villain. She looked like someone who couldn't believe she'd lost control. That all her rules, her threats, her fake notices, none of it had saved her. After court, a few people nodded at me. Tom shook my hand. "You did what none of us had the guts to do," he said. "You held her accountable." I said nothing. It wasn't heroism. It was exhaustion. It was what happens when you're pushed far enough by someone who mistakes silence for submission. The HOA board met privately. A week later, they removed Linda as president. Tom was elected interim chair. He knocked on my door that evening with a small gift basket and an apology. "You were right," he said. "We enabled her. Too many of us were afraid to challenge her. That won't happen again." I thanked him, accepted the gift, and closed the door. It felt like a funeral. A quiet end to a long siege. Life returned to normal. Or something like it. The solar panels stayed up. No more notices. No more surveillance cars. No more surprise inspections. The neighborhood started waving again. People lingered during walks. Kids played a little louder. The air felt less scripted. I still checked my cameras, though. Habit. I still scanned for emails from the county. I still had every legal document backed up in 3 places. Because peace, I learned, is fragile. All it takes is one person with a little power, and no accountability to burn it all down. Linda's case made the local news. Not because of the charges, but because of the absurdity. A neighborhood association president arrested for destroying a dashcam? It was clickbait gold. They interviewed her lawyer, who declined to comment. They tried to reach me. I declined too. I didn't need a platform. I'd already won where it mattered, in court, in my driveway, in my own home. They say justice is blind, but in this case, it had a lens. High definition, auto-uploading, motion-detecting justice. Linda wanted to erase the truth. She thought smashing a piece of plastic would erase her actions. What she didn't know, what so many people like her never know, is that the truth doesn't live in the device. It lives in what it records. And once it's out there, there's no crushing it. Some neighbors joked about naming a street after me. Others wanted to rewrite the HOA charter. I didn't want either. I just wanted what I had before: quiet. Stability. The right to exist in my home without being hunted by a petty tyrant. And slowly I got that back. Linda pled not guilty. Her trial is still pending. She's out on bail, but under restrictions. She's not allowed to contact me or approach any HOA board meeting. Last I heard, she sold her house. Moved to a different county. Maybe she'll try again there. Maybe she'll behave. Maybe she'll find another person to harass. But if she does, I hope they have a dashcam too. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to cheer for. Just a long overdue correction to a problem that should have never existed. I wasn't a hero. I was just someone who refused to be steamrolled. But the effect rippled. A week after the trial date was announced, several homeowners came forward with their own stories. Quiet run-ins with Linda, threats over patio furniture, warnings about garage paint colors, even a fine issued over wind chimes that were too melodic. Her obsession with aesthetic control hadn't started with me. It had simply found the wrong target. The HOA began a full review of her policies. Entire pages of the rulebook were scrapped. A new system was introduced, transparent, democratic, and impossible for one person to weaponize. Anonymous complaints were no longer accepted. Surveillance-based violations had to include timestamped evidence and board consensus. It took less than a month to undo what Linda had enforced for 5 years. Nobody missed her leadership. Not one person defended her at the public vote. The strangest part was how many people admitted they'd been waiting for someone to stand up to her. As if everyone knew the monster was real but hoped someone else would take the first step into the dark. That became the story behind the story. Not just the arrest. Not just the destruction of a dashcam. But how long people tolerated abuse in silence because it was dressed in authority. They feared being singled out. They feared letters. Fines. Gossip. She built an empire on fear and paperwork. And it crumbled the moment someone challenged the foundation. The local press followed the case lightly, mostly for the irony. But I didn't talk. I didn't give interviews or accept speaking invites from HOA reform committees. I wasn't interested in being the face of anything. I just wanted my peace. That was always the goal. And eventually, the attention faded. The coverage stopped. The name Linda Harrington became a cautionary footnote, not a headline. My cameras are still up. Not because I expect more trouble, but because now I understand how quickly things can turn. I still have the footage saved, in multiple places. The Dashcam company even sent me a free replacement when they heard the story. I never asked for it. They just said, "We stand by our customers when truth matters." That's more than I ever got from the HOA before it changed hands. As for Linda, she accepted a plea deal. No jail time, but a felony on her record and mandatory community service. The judge added a no-contact order with a perimeter of 500 feet. She was told in open court, if she sets foot in Oakwood Meadows again, she will be in violation. I was present at that hearing. She didn't look at me. Not once. Her hair was down for the first time, loose and limp, her voice barely audible as she accepted the terms. That was the final moment. The end of her authority, her war, her games. Whatever crown she wore in her mind had been stripped. Tom stopped by again a few weeks later. He brought a binder filled with rewritten HOA procedures. "We're naming the due process clause after you," he said, joking, but not entirely. I declined. I told him I wasn't a symbol. I was just a homeowner who got tired of being bullied. That's all it ever was. I still get mail addressed to the guy with the camera. Sometimes neighbors ask for advice on permits, or how to respond to letters. I help where I can. But I'm not interested in running anything. Power changes people. That's what I learned most from this. It doesn't take much to turn neighborly concern into obsession. All it takes is a title, a clipboard, and nobody watching the watcher. The solar panels? Still there. Still working fine. Generating power in total silence, month after month. Every time I check the app, I'm reminded that this all started because one person couldn't handle looking at someone else's roof. That's how absurd it was. A personal vendetta masked as community concern. And she nearly got away with it. Nearly. Looking back, I can say this: rules are important. But unchecked authority is dangerous. It grows in the dark, hides behind policy, and thrives when people stay silent. That's how people like Linda win. Until someone shines a light. Until someone says no. Not with shouting. Not with threats. Just with facts. With calm resistance. With a dashcam. I never wanted a fight. But when it came to my door, I answered it. When it trespassed on my property, I recorded it. When it lied to my face, I exposed it. And when it crushed my camera, I had the evidence backed up before the heel even landed. This story doesn't end with a parade or applause. It ends with a return to normal. Quiet mornings. Clean power. Neighbors who smile again. A neighborhood that finally learned to draw a line, not around flower beds or mailbox heights, but around decency. Around fairness. Around sanity. People ask what I would have done if the footage hadn't uploaded. If I hadn't had the cloud account or backup files. If the system had failed me. And my answer is simple. I would have kept fighting. Because once you see how fake authority works, You can't unsee it. Once you've been targeted, you learn fast who you are. And I'm not someone who backs down. Linda thought the rules made her untouchable. She forgot one thing. The law still applies, especially to those who think they're above it. That's the irony. In trying to control everything, she lost it all. Her title. Her reputation. Her grip. All because she couldn't stand losing an argument over a few solar panels. Let that be a lesson. To every petty tyrant hiding behind a clipboard. To every HOA president who confuses preference with law. To every Karen who thinks fear is policy. Some of us have cameras. Some of us know our rights. And some of us? We don't flinch when you start playing dirty. We press record. And we wait.